but it's nice to see your faces. Thanks for being here. We have a great agenda today. So I'm just going to go ahead and start by calling the roll. Just say here or present when you hear your name. Dr. Tommy Bernard.
Here. Caitlin
Brooks.
Here.
Pam Cashwell was not going to be here. Danielle Carmen.
Here.
Judge Sherry Elliott. Not here. Tammy Harris. Judge Claire Hill.
Here.
Dina Joy. Jasmine McGee. Billy West.
Here.
Caitlin Ryland.
Here.
Suzanne Monty Smith.
Present.
Mark Nichols.
Here.
Angelica Wins. Okay. And I see Christine and Nancy. Okay, I'm going to read the ethics reminder. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every North Carolina Human Trafficking Commission member to avoid conflicts of interest. If any Human Trafficking Commission member has any known conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the Human Trafficking Commission today, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. Okay, so we are going to move right into our first presentation. I am really happy to introduce Lyric Thompson, who's the Senior Director for Policy and Advocacy for the International Center for Research on Women. And Lyric, I know you have some other scheduling things going on today, I think so. Thank you for being with us and for your presentation, and I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, it's board season here in the nonprofit world, so always very, very hectic, but delighted to be here to share with you some recent work by my organization, the best organization you've probably never heard of, called the International Center for Research on Women. And I'll just start by saying that I am a daughter of North Carolina. I'm from McDowell County. I live in Wake County now. I'm on the North Carolina Women's Council, and we partnered with the Women's Council in the rollout of this study because my organization, as you might understand from the name, mostly has approached this issue of child marriage internationally, where I think most of us think of this as being a problem. And we actually coined the term more than a decade ago. We've been looking at strategies to delay age of marriage, sure that children and girls in particularly, because it does tend to be more often the girl is the younger spouse, that, looking for opportunities to keep girls in school and help them to thrive and understand kind of drivers of the issue so that we can tailor effective solutions. Well, we were approached by actually another daughter of North Carolina, Jeannie Smoot, who is the country's leading legal mind on age of marriage law, which you may already know, but I was shocked to find varies tremendously from state to state, and in some states has no floor or no lowest age stipulated, and in our own state of North Carolina is tied for lowest floor set by statute now of 14. We're tied with Alaska on that. So not kind of a dubious honor for us. And that's 14 in cases of pregnancy or parenting. So 14 and 15-year-olds, that's the exception. And then 16 and 17-year-olds, it's parental consent. So she came to us and said, look, you're a research organization that's kind of written the playbook on this globally. We don't have publicly available data in North Carolina and a number of other states. But we know from our legal practice, they provide legal aid to domestic violence survivors, forced marriage survivors, child marriage survivors, that is a problem. And it's hard to convince policymakers to do anything about it without data documenting that. So could you please do something about it? And we said, we'd love to. So I do have a slide deck to show. Are you presenting that or am I sharing my screen? What's our mechanism here?
If you are okay sharing your screen, I think it will work, and that way you can advance them. But if not, I can pull it up as well.
Okay. Let me just, I have my next presentation up as well. So let me just toggle back. Here we go. Child marriage in North Carolina. Share screen. Let's see here. There it is. Share. Can you? I can't see you anymore, so tell me if you can.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. So let me see here. Now, how do I get it to go? Oh, there it is. Okay. First time doing a WebEx here. Just kidding. All right. So what did we do? We set out to answer the question, how many children are still getting married in the state in recent years. Now, the reason that there isn't publicly available data in the state of North Carolina is because the marriage license applications are accepted at the county level. And of course, we have 100 counties. And the process for collecting and storing that data is different county to county. Several counties don't even have digital records to share with someone making a research request, and all of them are handling their records differently. And most of them have not a real clear sense of child marriage being an issue or the like sort of broader legal and policy landscape that we've just identified. So we had to go literally county to county to each of the registers of deeds and request their marriage application records dating back to 2000. We wanted to look in, the current generation, most recent, because I think there's lots of myths in our minds about this, right? Number one, child marriage doesn't happen here. This study has debunked that myth. Number two, if it does happen here, it was probably, an old law on the books and it's not still happening, which we wanted to look, at the most recent couple of decades. We also requested back to 2000 because of the states in the United States that have publicly available data, the most comprehensive set of that information was a study compiled by PBS Frontline in 2015, I think. And they did their slice of records in the states that had publicly available data back to 2000. So we wanted to use the same bracket of years to be able to compare and say, how many children are marrying here legally? And then how does that make North Carolina rank amongst other states in the country? So I will emphasize to you that we did not collect any personally identifying information. This was a safe exercise in terms of protecting people's privacy. All we requested was number of applications that you have in your county dating back to 2000, where one or both parties are a minor under the age of 18. Now, I will also say another myth that I think a number of us have and want to believe that the study has also debunked is that if it's happening, it's probably the Romeo and Juliet scenario, not that that worked out very well for them, of the, couple of 17-year-olds, young and in love, very much, consenting to this relationship. And our findings dispute that as well, as I'll talk about in a minute. So anyway, that's the process. All of the records that we received were checked to ensure that the ages of both applicants were recorded accurately, and at least one of those applicants was a minor when the application was submitted. In total, we received data from 50 out of the 100 counties, representing 43% of the population of North Carolina in 2018. So this is definitely an undercount. what we did is we extrapolated for the remaining 50 counties on the basis of each of those counties' population size. So assuming similar rates in the remaining counties and then adjusting for population size to obtain that overall statewide estimate, which is definitely an undercount because not all of the 50 counties that we received the records from gave us records for the full 20-year time range that we requested. And we did remove any applications where we weren't confident that data was correctly entered. So adding those two things together, we arrive at our statewide estimate and can compare with the other states. So what did we find? Well, thousands of children are marrying in the state up to today. Between 2000 and 2019, we found 3,949 marriage license applications involving 4,218 minors. So that second number is a little higher because in some of those cases, it is two minors applying to marry, but in the overwhelming majority of them, it's a child and an adult. Extrapolating by population size and assuming, again, the same rates, the estimate of the total would put us in the top 5 states nationally in terms of numbers, behind Texas, Florida, and Kentucky, and ahead of Alabama. So our total statewide estimate, this is for the 2000 to 2015 time range, because remember the PBS Frontline study is a few years old now, so we didn't include anything in those final few years that we collected, would put us in the top 5. I should also note that most of these states that you see on the screen, and we'll talk about this in a minute, have changed their age of marriage laws since the PBS Frontline study showed what a problem they had. And so we're probably climbing the charts as long as we leave our law as it is. And we're definitely seeing some of the people from these other states coming to North Carolina to get married now, which I'll also talk about. So, myth number 1, busted. Yes, child marriage is happening in North Carolina. Myth number 2, the Romeo and Juliet scenario, it's all a bunch of 17-year-olds getting married who very much love each other and consent. No, we found that the overwhelming majority of applications, 93%, were between a child and an adult. And more troublingly, in the 14 and 15-year-old age brackets, the majority of those were in direct statutory rape laws, which is another ugly problem that is the case in the United States, where age marriage actually conflicts with statutory statutes. And because we have the in order to marry as a 14-year-old, you have to be pregnant or parenting. So there's evidence of sex that happened in the marriage legislation. That is criteria. That same sex under our statutory rape law would be a felony offense in 57% of the applications that we reviewed. So we have some work to do there. The other interesting thing that came up in the course of this work, it is not part of our data records requests, because remember I said we didn't request any identifying information, is the number of people who are coming from out of state to get married here because our age of marriage laws are lower. So we learned this anecdotally from some of the registers of deeds that we were working with, then went back and did their own analyses. And in Buncombe County, for instance, we had, I think it went from 1 in 10 applications being out of state to 1 in 3 in the same time period over the last 20 years. So very rapid rise as these other states are fixing their laws. And then I should also say that the age gaps were large, which was alarming. The largest age gap was a 40-year difference between a 57-year-old adult and a 17-year-old minor. And so this is, I think should be causing some red flags and should be addressed. So what are we recommending? is the actual statute in question that you see on the slide here. And basically what we're recommending is get rid of all the exceptions and raise the age to 18. So that would just basically be limiting marriage to adults 18 and over in the state, no exceptions. And that would address the conflict with the statutory rape laws, as well as set our children up for success. I'll just say briefly before we open for questions that my organization does not lobby at the state level. So while we recommend on the basis of our and other evidence, and I would also be happy to share a recent synthesis that we did of all of the national level impacts of age of marriage on, pick a health, education, violence indicator, poverty, across every indicator we look at in existing literature. The younger the age of marriage of the child, the worse the outcomes, particularly for girls. Twice as likely not to finish high school, 4 times as likely not to complete college, and very interesting data that I'll point to on the pregnancy exception, because I think another thing that we would like to believe is, well, if a 14 or 15-year-old is pregnant, she probably would be better off having a spouse. Study also looked at comparing indicators of teen mothers who remained married and cohabiting versus did not. And those who were married and cohabiting were more likely to drop out of school, less likely to complete education, less likely to be able to bring income, more dependent on the spouse, and higher exposure to violence, depression, anxiety. Even looking at things like diabetes and heart attack and stroke, I'm not overstating the data here. I'd be happy to share it. That's not state level, as I said, it's national. But on every single indicator, the outcomes are worse for child brides. So I'll just leave it at that. Those are our recommendations on the basis of the evidence and our experience on this issue for the last couple of decades. But we are not actually actively lobbying. We can put you in touch if you're interested in joining the efforts to change the age of marriage law, which I'm really delighted to hear have been very well received by legislators, press, both parties. I think this is something that can change. And we've seen in other states is a very bipartisan and solid issue. But in any event, I'm happy to put you in touch with the folks who are leading the legislative strategy at McGuire Woods Consulting. And there's also an organization that helped us a lot with looking at what other states have done, called the Tahereh Justice Center, that is doing various trainings for service providers. So if you work for legal aid, domestic violence provision, children's support services, they're doing trainings on this issue and starting to think about what the landscape of service providers looks like, that we need to also be part of the solution in addition to legal change. So I would be delighted to make connections with folks who are either lobbying or doing work in the service provider community. That is not our role. We're just the researchers, but happy to answer any questions about the research. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
What was the second group that you mentioned that was doing the state comparisons?
That is the Tahereh Justice Center, and actually they have a state compilation that I think was updated in August of 2020 of this year, that shows age of marriage. What are the states that don't have a floor? What other states do have? How have those states that I showed at the beginning addressed the various legal loopholes in their laws, and also state-by-state comparison of age of marriage laws and statutory rape laws. So I can share that either the chat or in the follow-up, whatever is best for you all.
I do have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to commission members first for any questions or comments.
To chime in, Lyric, thank you for doing the presentation. As soon as I found out about this, I thought the full commission they have to hear about this. I would love the data that you were talking about, the synthesis or study that you did. If you could send that to me, I would love to look at it. And just to let everybody know, I'll kind of go into this when I do my legislative committee update, but I have met with Laura Marryir from McGuire Woods, who is the individual that Lyric was mentioning about the state efforts for, adjusting the marriage age. And so we can talk about that when I do my update, but I have met with her. I think this is an incredibly important issue that somehow we need to either throw our support or do it on our own. So thank you, Lyric.
Thank you. I think they would love to have the commission's support on this and your minds on how we fix this problem. So happy to share those. I'll just do both. I'll share them in the link, and then I'll send a follow-up email as well.
Thank you.
Other questions from commission members? I still have a couple of questions. You mentioned that after the PBS story aired, several of those states changed their laws. Do you know off the top of your head, did they do like what you were recommending, basically prohibit any marriage under the age of 18?
There is a mix. It also, I think, depends on, the various other state statutes and kind of how they a lot of different issues. Some did move to 18, no exceptions. Some just raised the floor. So, from 12 or 14 or whatever it was to 16 or 17. Some married it with whatever their, legal emancipation of minor kind of process is. Because that's another thing that I should have also said I'm not a lawyer, and I would love to put you in touch with the brilliant folks at Takare who are, and who helped all these states do these changes. But the just terrible, terrible anecdotes that you hear from, girls who were in an abusive marriage, attempted to go seek domestic violence shelter support or something, and were turned away because they were not emancipated through the marriage and still legal minors, and basically returned to an abusive spouse, which I know is a cycle that you're all very familiar with in the trafficking world. So I think that it's very, the easiest instrument, I will say, is the just 18 no exceptions. There have been different ways to slice this and dice this otherwise other states have explored, and these folks at Takare can also share in terms of over the ensuing years the percentage of cases that fell, and in their experience the best way to end child marriage is 18 no exceptions, but there's still definitely percentages of decrease through various different other legal solutions that states have devised.
Okay, thank you. I know we've talked about how as other states have changed their laws, North Carolina has unfortunately become a destination. And I think we all want North Carolina to be a destination for travel, but not for something like this. This is a terrible thing to be a destination for. I guess I've never thought about it. Are there any restrictions? Like, can you just come from anywhere to North Carolina and get married? No questions asked.
Yes, you can't. Our state law is fine with that. Some of the states like Kentucky, where some of the folks who've come to our western counties after Kentucky fixed its law are not aware that their state law actually said this is illegal here now, and anybody who goes outside the state to get married elsewhere and comes back, we will not recognize this as a legally valid marriage. But they don't know that, or they don't care, and they still come here. But no, there's nothing in our law that would prohibit that. And I mean, these registers of deeds are fired up. I'm talking like left, right, and center. They're like, this is an issue and we need this law to change because legally we have very little backing to deny these marriages, even though that we, now know that this is a problem and it's, we're like top 5 in the nation for it. They still legally are obligated to approve these petitions. With the exception of in the 14 and 15-year-old cases, there is a kind of extra step of looking for instances of harm, kind of a guardian ad litem sort of thing. But it's still happening, and it's still in direct conflict with our statutory rape laws. So, and nobody's asking any questions for the 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yeah, well, you just answered what my last question was going to be, which do they have any ability to question when these people come?
As it was explained to me, you do have some discretion, but it's really risky. So in the case where, just by virtue of having this conversation about this study with us, the Buncombe County Register of Deeds received the application from the Kentucky couple who was also like a 57, and so it was another 40-year age spread. He had these conversations with us, and he did, ask her to go, step aside to this other room alone with me and talk to me about like, how are you feeling? Are you, are you really consenting to this, et cetera? Didn't get the answers he was looking for, and he denied it. But then that couple went to a neighboring county that we hadn't been able to reach and was approved. So, it's very ad hoc and not protective unless we fix the statute statewide.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Are there any non-legislative things that right away to either gather better data or compulsory reporting that wouldn't require a legislative fix?
Yeah, so that's actually the process that Tahereh is leading now with service providers, which is talking to everybody who might have an opportunity to identify harm or, issues of concern, training them on this issue, letting them know, and then trying to make sure that those services are accessible. So there is sort of a larger ecosystem approach that they're leading, and I'd be happy to connect you with them. But they are also, lobbying on the legal piece as well, because that has been shown in the other states to be the most direct fix.
Anyone else?
Just a comment, Jennifer. That was pretty unique. I've never seen anything like that with the statistics, so that was new for me to see that. I really appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And you didn't realize, you just don't realize it's out there until you actually see it on a graph and see what you did with it in your investigation. So I applaud you for that. And like you said, there is a way to fix it, and the states have been successful with legislation. I would like to see that legislation and how it reads, and I think we could look at it from our state very closely and see what we can do.
For that, yeah, I will. Once I stop answering questions, I will include all of those resources in the chat, and then follow up as well. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's myth busting, right? We want to believe this isn't happening, and we want to believe that if it's happening, it's that Romeo and Juliet scenario and not evidence of coercion or harm. And it's a problem hidden in plain sight.
Well, it sounds like you're talking exactly about human trafficking, because that's exactly what we say. People think that it doesn't happen here and it's hidden in plain sight.
That's right.
So, Lyric, on behalf of the commission, thank you for your work on this.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you for your support. And I'm going to mute and stay on for a second and just include these links in the chat, and then happy to answer any questions that anybody thinks of offline, and connect you to the advocates and service provider community as useful.
I did have one question, if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Is there any other publications coming out on TV, documentary or anything that you did?
Let's see here, not TV. So we did some op-ed placements at the time that the study launched last week, feels like last week, last month. And I believe that some of those publications are doing their own reporting and follow-ups and like trying to find people that they can talk to who, have married as children and kind of tell their more personal stories, since this is archival and not as personal as, it would have been to actually go do some qualitative analysis with survivors. And then like a couple of other national publications have reached out about covering the issue. I believe that the PBS Frontline data is being updated currently for the other states, to include 2015 to 2020, but that won't be out till next year. And I'm not sure if they're going to do another like full series or just like update on their website that here's a more, complete recent data set 5 years later.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks again, Lyric.
Sure.
And good luck with your next presentation.
Thank you so much. I'll just be muted for a second here, sharing a couple of extra resources, but thank you all for your time and your commitment and all you do on this really important issue. We're grateful to have you.
All right, well, we will move into our next item, which is approval of minutes from last month's meeting. Some of you all were able to join the September 29th special meeting. That was the meeting where we approved the remaining grant funds to be allocated directly to the Cumberland County Worth Court. So Christine has shared those minutes previously with everyone. Does anyone have any corrections, edits to the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, I am just going to run through the roll again. Yes or no, if you approve the minutes. Dr. Bernard.
Yes.
Caitlin Brooks.
Yes.
Pam Cashwell. Tammy Harris. Dina Joy. Jasmine McGee. Mark Nichols.
Yes.
Caitlin Ryland.
Yes.
Suzanne Smith.
Yes.
Billy West. Did we lose him? Okay. Angelica Wind.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, next on our agenda is committee reports and action items. The first committee on the list is a legislative committee update. Caitlin, I know you all have been hard at work. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, I was making sure I got those links that Lyric just sent out before I misplaced them. Yes, we have been hard at work. Our goal to get a legislative agenda prepared and ready for the commission to look at in the December meeting is our goal, and we're working towards that. Our last meeting was in September, and we talked about a number of things. Child marriage was one of them, and we looked at the loophole that we discussed at the last meeting. We do have some legislative changes that we'll review. I will have a rough draft for the commission to look at the next meeting, and it will, hard copy. You'll be able to look at what they actually are, and I'll have Christine actually send those out beforehand. So if anybody has adjustments or anything, they can really look at them before the meeting. But so the loophole seems to be relatively easy and something that we can address. And then child marriage was a big one that we discussed. I did meet with Laura Puryear from McGuire Woods, who is heading up the initiative in North Carolina. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I think probably likely vote on, because I would like to know kind of which direction the commission wants to go, is if we're looking at this, we know it's an issue, we know we would like to address it. I personally think that the suggestion by Lyric's group is a good one, to just raise it to 18. I think we want to throw our support and just go alongside the efforts of the folks who are heading this up and kind of have one voice. I'm happy to join in on the coalition or go to their meetings and kind of stay looped in with what's going on. Or do we want to include it in our legislative agenda, mirroring kind of what the goal of 18 is?
Due to my funding restrictions, I'll abstain from participating in this conversation for a vote.
Thoughts on this from anyone?
Yeah, just a question, Caitlin. So they both have the same outcome, correct? Basically, either way, they both have the same outcome. The goal was to get it to 18 is what you're suggesting, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it sounds like you've already looked at the least interference path that we can take, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then I would suggest to follow Caitlin's lead, unless there was some other reason why. That would be the easiest approach to this, and a quick fix too, probably, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think the statutory change is that big of a deal. I do, after speaking with Laura, I do think as with everything, there is going to be opposition. And so, when thinking through the strategy, I don't want to put all our eggs in one basket and have it not go through. But at the same time, it's the exact same thing, in my personal opinion, what our goal would be. And so I also don't want to waste our time and effort including something that someone else is already addressing, when we could use that, on something else, because our list is plenty long. So
that is the way that I feel too. It sounds like there is already a kind of coalition moving toward this, and we certainly support it. How far are they? Do they have a sponsor, or how far are they in that process?
I don't think they have a sponsor yet, not to my knowledge. But I'm happy to, if that's the route we want to go, I'm happy to stay plugged in and attend their meetings or whatever. I don't know if they're doing virtual meetings or if they're just kind of looping back in. But I'm happy to stay connected and then report back kind of with where things are, if we think that's a good choice.
Caitlin, I'm curious because you spoke with Laura. Did she give any indication, like strategically, which direction, like any guidance on where they would like to see us be involved?
She said, she felt like they were in a strong place, that they were already, moving forward, and that if we wanted to support them, that would be wonderful. I just kind of said, let me talk with the commission, see which direction they would want to go. I certainly don't want to waste our time, us working on it if you feel really strongly about it, and we could just throw our weight and say we, strongly support this. But I've only met with her once. That was last Thursday. So we were just doing an initial kind of check in. I wanted to see where they were. She filled me in. If we want, I could have her come and speak at the next meeting. I'm sure she would be open to that. Did that answer your question, Angelica?
Yeah, I'm almost
Okay.
positive. For me, if they've got a strong footing and they feel optimistic, then in having the robust legislative agenda that the legislative committee has, then we may not want to serve a role other than throwing our weight behind the work that they're doing. And I'm
Yeah.
also wondering if that is the direction that we go. There's nothing to say that in the future, should something come up in the sense that they're experiencing challenges that they didn't see or anything, that we can actually change our role in the sense of also spearheading our own efforts. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good plan. I don't want to call it backup, but pivot. If we do this and then we feel like there are issues, then we could. I think the legislative fix is relatively easy. I looked at it with what Lyric's group had suggested. It's just basically repealing one and then adjusting some language. So that, in that regard, it's not like we would have to go asking experts and stuff. It looks pretty easy.
Thank you.
So I think it makes the most sense to me for you to just remain plugged in with them.
Okay.
We support the efforts. I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for us to have there's two separate tracks of the same thing.
I totally agree. Yep. Okay, well then I will just plan on doing that and staying plugged in, and I will report back. I'll meet with Laura again and give a more thorough update at the next meeting.
The next legislative committee meeting is when?
It is November 5th. We wanted to do it earlier in November as opposed to later with the holidays coming up. And we wanted to go ahead and get it on the books so that we could try to finalize what we're looking at. And then I could have something written down for the commission in December, because I would like that to be looked over and at the beginning of the year have something ready to roll if we need it.
Yeah. Does it make sense to invite her to participate in the November 5th meeting?
We could. Yep.
I mean, we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. So yeah, the next meeting is November 5th. Going back to the committee, the previous committee meeting, we had a couple of things that we were looking at. The committee members are really strong. They're stepping up to the plate, and they are looking at a couple of different issues. Angelica and Jasmine, we're going to look at a couple of things and report back to the committee. Sarah Byrne and Daniel Bowes, we're going to look at a couple of things and bring them back to the committee. But basically right now we have, if we're not looking at pursuing on our own the marriage age, then we'll have the loophole that we discussed at the last meeting with the judge. And then we will have recurring funding. Obviously, that's at the top of our list. And then it looks like there might be another quick fix of an issue that was in some statutory changes that we made this last time. So I guess Christine, was that in 2018? Was that 17, 18?
I think it was 18.
18, okay. So those changes from 18, there was a quick thing that Sarah Byrne thought would adjust and really help. So it looks like there might be two, maybe three things on the legislative, actual statute side.
I just keep coming back to the importance of our funding.
I know. you know, we talked about that, and I would love to hear the commission's input on suggestions. One of the things that I wanted to see kind of opinions, we had, you know, we discussed it a little bit, but do we want to have, you know, a big ask and just hope that we could get a little bit of it? Or do we want to go in and just have, you know, kind of request bare minimum, knowing that budget is low? Kind of strategy of what the commission thinks. You know, I don't know if anybody has any brilliant ideas, I'd love to hear them.
You know me, I think we ought to ask big, and because you're only going to get probably a third, if not even half of what we asked for, and then justify it by what the work the commissions in the committee is doing. I mean, think of all the committees we have and look at what our outreach is, look what we're doing, our goals and objectives for each committee, and align that with a strategic plan when we go in there asking for the money. Because these are the reasons why we have to have it, and we haven't had anything. And most of all, we got to have staff, like we said before, to even function. So I'm always big about let's go in for the grand slam, and if we get a crumb out of it, that's better, I guess, than not getting anything at all. But and really pour it on, and I'll call everybody I know down there, and we'll get organized and hit them up and make a big push, because I would love to see us have the funding to do the things that we know we got to do in our state. I mean, human trafficking is not going away, and we know that. And these people got to realize that our legislators do, that they're accountable just like we are as a commission member to do the best job we can, but we have to have it with funding, and they certainly realize that. So I think we got to come up with a realistic number, but be able to justify it from all the work we're doing from the committees within the commission, and then let's get organized and make a big push. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think we can certainly justify the output. I mean, to be working on a shoestring budget, the output that the commission has had with looking at issues, bringing them, you know, forward, making statutory change. It's not like we've just been, you know, twiddling our thumbs. So I think that's a good plan, Mark.
What was the amount that was included in last year's budget that was vetoed?
Was it 250?
It was 250.
Yeah.
Caitlin, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And what was the ask?
I think, well, Christine,
You know, I wasn't a part of that, but I do feel like, Mark, you might remember. Do you remember?
I think we asked for 500,000 is what I was pushing. And we had to knock on a lot of doors, and Jamie Bowles was very successful in helping us down there. He's an old friend of public safety, and he got it. And he's been a good supporter. A couple others in the on the Senate side and the House Speaker side that helped us. Senator Berger's office did too. So it was very favorable when we went and met.
Yeah, this is not a controversial issue, and it has. I mean, it should be on everyone's radar by now. It should be a nonpartisan issue. Of course, people find a way to make everything partisan, unfortunately.
So I just think that the likelihood of us getting more than was included last time is probably fairly slim, unless perhaps we can make a case for the pandemic creating a deeper need. So I just think people should be thinking about, and I think I've heard people articulate ways in which the human trafficking problem has been worsened by the pandemic. But I think if we can demonstrate, you know, something else we can do that is COVID related, that would help advance that argument.
Danielle, I think that's a great point, because the folks who have successfully gotten money tied it directly into COVID, domestic violence, and the other pot of money that went out. So I think that's a good, I would love to be able to include that, but I don't have any information to back it up.
Yeah, I don't either. I just think it would be a good thing for folks to be thinking about.
Yeah.
No, that's spot on. I like that idea, and the fact that And also, when you think of COVID, it's isolated us from being able to work as a full commission. So we're having to go outside the norm to try to communicate, to try to keep functioning our duties within the commission and be more creative. And the most important way that we've been so far, in a lot of ways, is our outreach and what we're trying to do with our media outreach. I mean, that is starting to work. Our airports, our messages, the call-ins, and maybe take some of the information, Christine, that we're getting from Laris on the hotline list of call-ins and work with Carl to get more data to be able to support what we're asking for. Certainly, the hospitals are definitely seeing more and more cases, probably of domestic violence across our state as well. So that's a great point, Danielle.
This is Dina, and I will just say we were one of the groups that got CARES Act money, and I think that's a great point to really look for those COVID dollars. What I will caution you about is when you are seeking them or they are telling you that they're going to provide you with COVID relief, be sure that you know on the front end what the existing deadlines are, because that created real challenges to people who got CARES Act money, who were told that it was for the state fiscal year, and then on the back end found out that it had to be expenses that were paid by December 30th. And for those that didn't get money till late, it created a real challenge for them. So I would say just be cautious going in, making sure that you know what the existing deadlines are so that it meets what your intent is for that funding. But I think that's a great plan.
And having been one of those people, I can say, yeah, it caused huge problems. So I certainly can relate to that. And I'm not even necessarily advocating for trying to get CARES Act federal funding. I'm more just trying to articulate that if we can demonstrate that the current situation that we're all living in has enhanced the need for this commission services, and we can have a bigger footprint in terms of impacting the issue, that we should just be able to articulate that in our requests to the legislature.
Yeah, I agree completely, Danielle. Just make sure when they award you that you know where it's coming from, because some people got awarded money as normal, but they didn't realize it was being awarded by the GA with CARES Act dollars. So if they tell you they're going to give you money, just double check where they're giving it to you from so you don't get hung up like a lot of us did.
I definitely appreciate that point, because it happened to us too. So I understand.
And, while we appreciate any funding, if we don't get it recurring, we're going to end up in exactly the same position next year. And none of that CARES Act funding is recurring, I don't think.
I think that's what the challenge, Jennifer, too, which I appreciate, because we know without a doubt that people are being trafficked, and we know that national disasters, and obviously COVID is a national disaster, that there's always an increase in human trafficking when there's a national disaster. They're just not coming out right now because they're more isolated than ever. But I anticipate that in the future, once we are at a different place, that we're going to see people come out of the woodwork and be victims and say, this is what happened to me. So we have to be able to set the strongest foundation so that we can respond as a state to what's coming down the road. And then the other piece about tying into COVID, though, is that piece, Jennifer, that you said, we've got to make this reoccurring funding stream, and trying to figure out what the balance between knowing what the need is and also pushing that this needs to be a reoccurring funding stream to support this vital work that's happening and that is needed in the state. In light of what we know around human trafficking, and that it's not going anywhere. If anything, it might be increasing in our state. And so it's just that balance between pushing of it being reoccurring. I just want us to. And Caitlin, I would also go with Mark. I mean, I always hate to leave money at on the table. So I would certainly try to go big, and in the hopes that we get half of what we asked for, than to ask for 250 and only get 125.
Yeah.
Not making a comment about legislation or anything, just from a purely experience based perspective, our numbers are through the roof in terms of passport confiscation, controlled communications, and our caseload, our human trafficking caseload is higher than ever. People are
I'm
not
sorry to
getting
hear
the,
that.
people are
I'm
not
not
getting
surprised.
the PVPA. They're not doing any consular interviews. They're not getting the PVPA pamphlet that they normally get when they do their interview in Mexico. And then just the stress of COVID, job loss, and other factors has really put pressure points on families and created additional vulnerabilities for individuals that were already here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear any of that. It makes me sad though. Caitlin, do you have the guidance that you need? Did you get what you needed from us?
I think so. Yeah. I'm sorry. My computer was about to die. I didn't realize it. Yes, I think I have what I need. The gist is we're going to meet. I hope to kind of formalize some things at our next committee meeting, and at that point, I'll bring something forward for the commission to vote on in the December meeting. So yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Caitlin, and for everyone that's on the committee. Mark, you have a public safety committee report. You're muted.
My bad. FedEx rang the doorbell, and I was trying to not let it keep chiming. I'm sorry. We've got a great team, very exciting work that we've been doing. First of all, thank you to everybody that participated in our video that we're very proud of. And Christine, and Madeline, Nancy, all of you have been so good to me and helping me with my team. And we're very, very fortunate. You know, North Carolina is just, we're exploding right now, in my opinion, with the talents that we've seen on the commission, and everybody's rising to the top, and we're taking this thing during the middle of a pandemic. I mean, that's what's so exciting to me, to see everybody working hard together, and to see the outpour of everybody wanting to try to do something is fascinating. So with our team, with public safety, we were able to put together some video clips, and thanks to our friends at WRAL Fox, they were able to do some work for us. And so we do have a video. Before we jump into that, though, real quick, I did just want to mention, Chief Smith, are you still with us? I know you're working on the airport down there in Charlotte Douglas to try to get some signs and messaging. Could you give us an update on that, dear?
I am working on that. However, I have not gotten a response from my contact. So I will continue to work on that.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Thank you very much. I know you guys had a lot of work to do. The president was down there yesterday, it sounds like, in your neck of the woods. So I know you've been very busy, but thank you. So, Madam Chair, we are working on these airports still, and thanks to Chief Smith's help, we're hoping to get our signs up there in Charlotte Douglas Airport, which is one of the other busiest airports in the nation. So she's working on that end. We worked really hard with the Justice Academy. We got a lot of work going on there with Trevor Allen and his group to try to get all our training efforts put into their in-service schools for 2021. So that is exciting that we're all working in harmony together to try to bring the latest and greatest information that we've had together. There's opportunities there for future podcasts through the Justice Academy so that they can actually see some of the cases that are going on. So again, hopefully Billy West, DA West and his group can help us with that, along with cases that have occurred across our state that have ended up where the individual has been arrested and put in prison. And to us, that's very exciting to know that we got cases where the bad guys goes to jail and the victims are saved and good things happen in the right way. So we're hoping to tell some of the success stories, to share it with more law enforcement out there and let them know, yes, this is occurring. And believe it or not, we still have those in law enforcement that don't believe human trafficking occurs, especially in their county. And it's amazing to me, almost 40 years of law enforcement, I guess it is 41. It's hard for me to believe that they don't understand it occurs. So that's kind of been a little barrier that we've been trying to get over from the law enforcement side, to tell people that, yes, it does occur. It does happen in your county. It does happen in your city. And believe it or not, it's happening in North Carolina. So we're still kind of pushing that uphill a little bit in some areas, but we're breaking the barriers. So that's been very, very successful for us to keep pushing and having the right team spread the word. So those things are occurring. And then last but not least, real quick, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, I wanted to talk about our videos. So Christine, I believe we have a video that we can show that we're very proud of, and we're hoping to do outreach with this. We're hoping to reach, heck, even Caitlin, this may be something we can show the General Assembly, every member, if we can, if I can do anything to, when they sign in or come in the door with their key fob, that they have to watch a video. Whatever we have to make them do, we got to spread the word, and hopefully we'll have support through them, and that'll help us with our budget and our finances as well. So what we ask for, hopefully we can get a lot of it. So without further ado, Christine, can you talk a little bit about the video that you helped us with? And we all had the same ideas, to spread and educate and do outreach. So with your staff, it was fantastic. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for everything as well, and for keeping this on your list for so long. Actually, Madeline is going to show. So we did work with WRAL, who's on the phone or on the video as well, and are in kind of those final stages, final edits of 3 videos. And Madeline is going to show one of those 3 is a law enforcement training video that Mark's Public Safety Committee has been talking about for a very long time. So she is prepared to show that one. And then a little bit later in today's meeting, if we have time, we're going to show one to 2 of the others that are more just general awareness, public awareness type videos. So Madeline, thank you so much. And you will recognize Madeline in this video because this was put together very quickly, and Mark found some contacts to help create some scenes, and Seth at WRAL was in some of them. So thank you to everyone.
Human trafficking is real in North Carolina. We have to do our part to fight it. We need to learn about it and understand that it doesn't always look the way that we think it does. It's happening all around us, in our banks, in our grocery stores, in our neighborhoods. Today, we're going to dispel some common myths about human trafficking.
North Carolina is not only a populous state, but it's located equidistant between New York and Florida. We have many interstates, airports, many large cities, particularly Charlotte and Raleigh. And so all the elements are there, unfortunately, to make our state a right place for human trafficking, both sex trafficking and labor trafficking.
So it's definitely a myth that human trafficking only affects girls and women. It affects boys and also affects men. It's unfortunate that if people have that mindset, that they may actually miss those very critical signs that this boy or this man may be trafficked, whether it be sexual or labor trafficked.
The human trafficking victim is one of all races, creeds, colors, and ages, but it usually comes from somebody who is now gaining something from that trafficker that they didn't have before.
Most of these traffickers are very manipulative, and they control by various methods. Sometimes, of course, they're going to present themselves as to kind of saving the person from this life of poverty that they're in. Or in many cases, if the person is already addicted to drugs, they'll provide them with the drugs. Or if they're not addicted to drugs, one of the first things that many traffickers will do is get them dependent on drugs, particularly heroin. And then the only way that they can satisfy that addiction is to get that from the trafficker.
These individuals are very, very talented at getting inside individuals' heads and telling them who they are and what they want in a way that those victims believe that they have met their best friend, they met their love for life, they're going to be married, and they're going to be taken care of. And these individuals have only one goal, and that is for that victim to make money for that trafficker.
Well, when an officer sees something that in their mind is not right, if it doesn't look right, they've got to continue to ask the questions. So if you had a traffic stop and you see a young person, be it a male or a female, with an older person, try to identify who they are, what the relationship is. If it doesn't add up, if that person won't speak for themselves, they need to continue to dig and ask questions.
It's not just walk up to the car and issue a citation and leave. If you see something in the vehicle that may draw your attention, age difference in the people that's in that vehicle, or if the passenger's not doing a lot of talking, then we try to dig a little deeper into the traffic stop and see what we can find in the investigation. Hey, it's Trooper Cup with the North Carolina Highway Patrol. The reason we stopped is for just a wellness check. You got your driver's license and your registration on you?
Yeah. There's the license.
Hey, ma'am, how you doing? You have ID on you, ma'am?
Hey, she's good. She's good.
You have an ID on? You got an ID for you, ma'am?
I got hers too.
You got her ID too? Okay, sir. If I could get you to step out with me, I'm gonna get you back here. We write you a warning for the violation and we'll get you on your way, okay? If I was to run across a case of human trafficking or believed to be human trafficking, at that point I would really separate those two people. I would contact other members on my unit and get them to come to my location. We will try our best to interview the two people.
When we do an operation, we're identifying potential human trafficking victims, bringing them to us, not to arrest them, but to get them in front of a social services or a nonprofit organization to be able to get them help. And so during that same event, we're also looking for the individuals that might have brought them there.
Victims sometimes do not reach out to law enforcement officers. So it's up to us to ask the questions and continue investigating until there's no more questions to ask.
Another type of human trafficking we have in North Carolina is labor trafficking, and that can be either underage people that are forced to work, or it can be anybody that is forced to work by means of coercion, threat of violence, fraud, anything like that. We see it in all types of fields. We see it in the restaurant field, the construction field. We see it a lot in the agricultural field. These people are controlled by intimidation or coercion. They are not paid a minimum wage. They are not treated well. They are not treated fairly. And labor trafficking is a problem in North Carolina.
So about 90% of victims of human trafficking will present to a healthcare facility of some type, whether it's dentistry, hospitals, urgent cares. And so we have an opportunity during that time they're being trafficked to intervene with that victim and help them to get out of that situation. They may not always be in a situation where they're ready to do that for a variety of reasons because of the constraints that are placed upon them by their trafficker, but it's an opportunity for us to intervene.
Victims often do not ask for help. They feel ashamed, they feel frightened, they feel trapped, they feel like they are stuck in their situation, and some of them even feel like somehow they've been convinced that they've brought their situation on themselves, when in fact they have not. Hence, they're victims.
In many cases, the victims may think they're in love with the trafficker. In many cases, they admire the trafficker. And in many cases, they've been in this organization so long that it's all they know. It's how they're given material things, food, clothing, whatever they may need. So they'll be very reluctant to provide information about the trafficker. They'll be very reluctant to admit they're in danger and reluctant to seek help.
They're kind of stuck in the lifestyle in some ways, or they feel like if they say something, they may have repercussions from that. So you have to be careful about what you say and who you say it to, because if the people who are controlling them are with them, you may actually put that person in significant harm, when they leave that situation.
Being a trooper, the uniform in and of itself is something that scares a lot of people in general. So when dealing with these victims, we have to remind ourselves we do have to tone down a little bit of the authority figure and try to dig into that person. Try to talk to them and let them know that we are people. Once they get to that level of knowing that we're people, they're more likely to open up to you.
It's essential for law enforcement to partner with our service providers, and in many cases our NGOs or non-governmental agencies, because in many cases the victims of the human trafficking, those that are being trafficked, they may be underage individuals, or they may be young ladies. They can also be young men. To treat these victims of trafficking like a common criminal as it relates to maybe prostitution, for example, is usually not going to bring about a successful result. We've got to get treatment for these victims of human trafficking, and then part of that treatment being getting them in a position where maybe they can help law enforcement build a case against the trafficker.
But what is unique about human trafficking cases is that you really have to have the victim services offices playing a role with you in terms of investigations, or it just will not work, because victims are very hesitant to talk to law enforcement unless they have that support system from victim service providers.
In North Carolina, we would like to extend our welcome to all law enforcement officers. If you would like more training, if you feel like you're not getting enough, or if you feel like some of the questions aren't answered, please reach out to the North Carolina Human Trafficking Commission, myself and others. We'll be glad to walk you through and help you get the training that you need. Our North Carolina Justice Academy partnership is unique, and they're open-armed as well to try to help law enforcement find out more and how to be able to stop and identify individuals that are involved in human trafficking in North Carolina.
All right. Well, it took a long time coming, but I think we have something that we feel like we like and we can use, and we're very grateful to WRL and Fox News, Fox 50 out there that helped do this. And Liz was on earlier. I don't know if she's still on. I can't see who's on, but Liz, we want to sincerely thank you for your help. That was very exciting, and there's more opportunities. And honestly, if we want to really go into an attack mode on human trafficking, these are the kind of things that we got to get out to the field and out. This is law enforcement training right here, but we do have some other awareness and some videos that we can show you later that we feel like the educational outreach is there. And to me, if someone sees it, we can at least educate people on what's happening in our state. If someone sees it's a victim or has been a victim or knows a victim, then hopefully they'll make the phone call and reach out. And it's just that opportunity that they see, well, it's the right thing to do. We've heard that in law enforcement. And Christine, I know you've heard it before recently too. Someone that they know is involved in human trafficking and they feel it in their heart, hey, I need to do something. And they're actually reaching out. Guys, it's because that we're able to put phone numbers out there for people to call. It's because we're making ourselves available. It's because the outreach that we're doing every day. It's the hard work that everyone is trying to get to those individuals. Caitlin, I know you're working hard on our legislative, and Caitlin Ryland, I know you're working hard with the labor trafficking, what you're seeing. So whatever we can do and ideas, let's just keep pushing and trying to spread the word on it. And whatever else we can do, we'll put it in our wish list to do. But right now we have 2 other videos. I don't think we have time to show them. Christine, you can respond to that. But it also does outreach. Very similar in a way. It's not the law enforcement approach. So thank you.
I was so impressed with those videos. I'm sorry.
Thank you for putting the videos together. Where can we access the link so that we can share them with our colleagues?
That's what I was going to ask, Caitlin.
You want me to? Yes. So this is Christine. Sorry, y'all. Yes, so we are actually going to review them one more time, all 3 today, and then should be able to put the files, well, we could send the files out, as well as I hope to embed them on the website. Mark, as long as your public safety committee is fine with the law enforcement one being on the website, we can always discuss that. But, I know that it was meant for helping to get training and awareness and at least get people interested to ask for more.
Yeah, let me talk to our committee. I just don't want to give away anything that we do that's officer safety, first of all, related issues that we can prevent maybe one of our officers from being hurt. But I think it was pretty open, and the trooper Cuff, he spoke right to everyone's heart, trying to explain, this is a hard job, but we're trying to put our shoes with yours, and hopefully you'll open up to trust us enough to let us help you. So, but let me review that with them, and I think that'll be available. I don't see a problem with it, but we'll check just to make sure.
Just a bit of humor. I feel like Trooper Cuff was probably born to be in law enforcement. What's his name?
Yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to make sure, and I was very hesitant. And I said, look, um, there's a policy right now, and Madam Chief's not on the call with us from DPS, but I said, what do you want to do? Do you need to wear your mask? And he said, well, I feel a little bit better. I don't want He said, I know this may be going on, this will be going out possibly after we have a vaccine or everything, or who knows. I said, no, it's going to be around for a while, unfortunately, the virus. So let's just go ahead and suit up with the mask and make it as real as we can. So I was real proud of him. It was pretty hot out there, guys, when we filmed, and he had his bulletproof vest on, his mask, and his hat and uniform. He didn't sweat a bit. So very proud of him.
I'm proud of all of you all the commissioners that participated in this video and the other ones. You all did a fantastic job, and thanks to WREL. I mean, it's such a great quality product. I'm just really excited about all three of them.
Well, thank you. And, it gives us opportunity for future outreach. And that's what I was talking to them about. If we can get funding, we need to keep it pushing. Even if we can develop something for our high schools, a video that they could show in the high schools now, because they are reaching out to younger victims every day. They're watching school bus stops. They're watching the arrest blogs of who's been arrested, and they know who to go after, these victims. And anything we can develop that we can make it an outreach to these individuals through our churches, through our schools, whatever it is, I'm ready to do it. And let's hopefully save some victims.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mark or the Public Safety Committee? Okay. All right. I got a thumbs up. So we will move on to the Public Health Committee, and Dr. Bernard, it's all yours.
Quite a tough act to follow there. I don't have a video.
Do you have a video?
Well, maybe next time. Now I think I feel like I need to, I'll work on that for next time. I'm not sure what it will be about. It might have a lot of children in sports and other things, but something at least. So I appreciate you'll let me speak today, but more or less the Public Health Committee met again, and through the great work of Erica and all the things that she's been able to do, we created a training that we feel like could cover the important aspects of human trafficking, but also potentially give North Carolina specific information to help train first responders. Obviously there's lots of information that's necessary in those trainings, and we don't want to duplicate efforts of what's already been done. But one of the common questions that we get, or that I get when I talk to providers or people in the medical field, is, that's great, I get it, I see it, I see where the problem is, but what do I do? And that's something that we're hoping to have, as part of this presentation. We are reaching out to committee members to get clinical vignettes that would fit different clinical scenarios, or we're going down the list of the different people we're supposed to be training, so that we can try to get some things that are pertinent, that would make sense to a law enforcement officer versus someone in a dental office versus someone in maybe the health department. How does it look in these different spots? Because the generalized training is good, but sometimes it doesn't quite hit home to, oh my gosh, that person is the person I see every day, or maybe twice a week that I'm missing, which is kind of what hit me when I started looking at, what's happening in the medical field. Like, this person who's come in for an STD check 18 times in the past 6 months, there may be something else to this, right? So generalizations obviously there, but this is what we're hoping to do with this training, is to have another option for North Carolina that might be a little bit more specific, that people can tailor to their specific trainees at that time to make it more pertinent and maybe hit home a little bit better. And we'll also give them an opportunity to say, okay, hopefully down the road we have, lots of different resources we can push people towards. And if they're in a certain region, we can say, okay, in this region, this is the PowerPoint you want to show them, because this is who they should be contacting. It also may give some people flexibility when they're going to train different people to put their own clinical vignettes in there, with some not their own, but some that we have approved, inside that PowerPoint presentation. We're hopeful that this is, just one potential training resource that we can recommend, but we feel like there's going to be a slate of things that could be recommended as a potential training source. And then once we have this available, we can pitch something to the legislature saying, hey, we need to train people, but we need some funding to try to help get this done. So we're trying to, round out the end of this feasibility study to kind of get all the right pieces in place, and then, come back to the committee once we have, full recommendation from the subcommittee on, what we think training should look like for North Carolina, with a potential option that's come from the Human Trafficking Commission itself. So I appreciate all the efforts of, Nancy and Christine and Erica and everybody else involved in making this happen. So we're looking forward to coming back either, sometime at the end of the year or the first part of next year with something that's actionable.
That's awesome, Dr. Bernard. I just wanted to mention that we do have some concrete, if it would be helpful, of where medical professionals identified human trafficking victims in North Carolina. So if that would be helpful for your trainings, or also the resource put together by the HT Pro Bono Legal Center, which talks about human trafficking in legal settings, and also like by medical, or also those that were identified by medical professionals. It's a really great resource, and we used it to train health outreach workers. So that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think anything like that would be great. We'd like to what we'd like to do is have a lot of information that we could pull into this, presentation, so that we can have things that are concrete and good examples. So if it's available, yeah, we'd love to take a look at it and give credit where credit is due. So we really appreciate that. If anybody else, has any, specific, in your sphere of influence, if you have, clinical vignettes that you've already used as part of, presentations you've used, if you're willing to share it as part of this, that would be fantastic as well, because, we all have, I'm sure have it. It's just a matter of, putting it out there, pen and paper, or, PowerPoint. Not really pen and paper. So, we're going to try to meet again in November if we can get something before holidays happens. But we're hopeful. With Erica's been great about being willing to help a little bit, even though her time ran out quickly. It seemed like it went by so fast. But she's been very fantastic about that. So we appreciate her a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. And it was a short contract, to understand, but appreciate her continuing to work on that. And I'm just excited, with what you all are working on, these videos, everything, just all of the resources that the commission is putting together. Just really exciting.
So it'd be great to have, something branded from the Human Trafficking Commission that's North Carolina specific, that we could point towards to say, number one, that, see the work that's being done with, with what we have and what we could do if we had more. But also it shows when we go and ask for funding, it's like, well, these are the fruits of the efforts, and you could have more of something like this if it, you gave us more.
Absolutely. And like Caitlin Brooks said earlier, this is a commission that's not sitting around just talking and doing nothing. We're producing a lot of good material here. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Dr. Bernard? Okay, thank you for that update. The last committee is the Ad Hoc Appropriations Committee. That's mine. I think probably at this point that committee is dormant unless we get any future grant funding. You all know that at the September special meeting, we approved the allocation of that final little piece of the grant fund. So, of course, the Appropriations Committee has not met other than that, and we probably will not meet until we have any future funding. So that is my report on that. And we're running a little bit behind, but I'm so glad that Liz and Seth from WRAL are here with us today. I know they have a great presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz and Seth.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Thank you everyone for inviting Seth and I to crash the party today. And a big shout out to Christine and Mark and Madeline and Nancy who are on the call and helped tremendously throughout the process of putting the digital outreach campaign together, as well as the 3 videos that we produced. It was a labor of love. I know that they were all thinking, oh my gosh, is this gonna work out? I mean, we were under a time crunch, and the videos when they first came out were not where we wanted them to be, and it was quite a process. So what you saw today was definitely a labor of love, and you have Christine and Mark and Nancy and Madeline to thank for it, because they have worked tirelessly to make that video what it is today. But what I'm going to do is kind of introduce the digital outreach campaign and walk you through how we put all of this together. And then I'm going to turn it over to Seth Crawford, who's with me today. And Seth is the one who really got into the nitty-gritty details of the digital outreach, managed the day-to-day of it, and he put together a digital analytics report that he's going to walk through. But just to give you guys a background on how this all came to fruition. So, Christine and I have been talking for quite some time about an outreach and education campaign, and something that could really be, an umbrella human trafficking awareness campaign for the state of North Carolina that folks could really rally behind. And thankfully, the opportunity came to be, and Christine and I put our heads together, and, in the world that we're living in right now, victim outreach, along with training, meetings, everyday life, has long been done in person with boots on the ground efforts. But in today's day and age, with COVID concerns, and in order to do victim outreach and training safely, you have to get creative. You also have to reach people where they are and where they're engaged, hence their telephones, their mobile devices, and their televisions. So Christine and I thought about this and worked on a way to reach victims of human trafficking digitally and connect with people based on who they are and where they're located. So again, we wanted to connect with people in their element. And based on the analytics we've seen, I feel really confident that we achieve that. And I'm not gonna steal Seth's thunder. But I did want to give a shout out to our content experts. Madeline is on the call today, but also we had Latiana Appleberry, Hong Cui, Hope Lloyd, and Kathy Nunez all helped us with the digital outreach portion of the campaign that we're going to talk about. They helped us establish who the target audiences were, what the messages would be that would most resonate with each, what the messages should be that would resonate with each audience, and also what information should live on the website where all of the ads that are being served would link to. So all of the outreach messages created they linked to a website with specific pages that addressed individual trafficking needs and circumstances. The website that I want everyone to visit when you have a minute is speakupnc.org. So speakupnc.org is the website that we were sending folks to, and I think it turned out really well. And Speak Up NC is the brand of this public facing outreach campaign that we all created. So yeah, there was a campaign name, a brand, and a logo created along with a website in record time, I might add. And we created all of these assets for this short campaign, but with the hope that we could have campaign materials built and ready to go should the opportunity to run an outreach campaign come available again. So it's simply a matter of flipping a switch now, as where before, there were no materials to use, so we were building everything from scratch. But now that we have all of this built, it's really just a matter of finding the resources to keep it going. So they're built and ready to run. Regarding the target audiences that we used, we focused on agriculture trafficking victims, labor trafficking victims. We had a general public campaign that was also running. We had youth trafficking victims as an audience that we focused on, as well as illicit massage trafficking victims. So again, our content experts helped us to better define these audiences and to create content that would resonate with each of these groups. And we based our targeting tactics off of the feedback from the content experts. So we couldn't have done this without their help again. Our digital analytics look amazing, but the most telling numbers are those of the national hotline tips that we received in September. In September of 2020, the tips were the highest they've been all year. Also in September of 2020, the tips were nearly 3 times as high as the same time period from 2 and 3 years ago. While direct correlation can't be made, our team is thrilled with those numbers. So now I'm going to kick it over to Seth Crawford, and he is going to go through our digital outreach analytics with you guys. And Seth is our digital account manager for Speak Up NC. And Seth managed all of the nitty-gritty details of the campaign, made sure that the digital campaigns ran as planned and performed well. He made digital targeting changes as needed, and he also compiled the data that we're going to look at today. So he's going to go through all the data with us and then offer campaign recommendations for moving forward. So Seth, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Liz. Good morning, everybody. So like Liz said, we worked really closely with the content experts on the front end to identify the key audiences for each of these campaigns that we had set up. And part of that information included what media sites where do they go to get information? What media do they use? Where do they live? What location in North Carolina are they located? And then based on that information, we allocated the impressions that we had available for this campaign into specific advertising platforms that would make the most sense for that audience. And so you'll see that as we go through, not every campaign so we had 5, remember, labor, generic, youth, agriculture, and then the illicit massage business, as were our 5 kind of overarching campaigns. And so these 4 were basically selected for this particular tactic. And this is the audience network. And basically what this is just WRAL's ability to target the internet based on audience information. So geography, demographic information we know about them, and then some online behavior information as well. So the point of this is to really try to target the best, the users that would be the most likely to find the information in our ads useful. And As you'll see, we served a bunch of impressions through this. Over 7 million impressions went out. And just for some context, the industry average of display advertising on the internet is 0.08%. And anything double that is really, really good. And we were over 4 times the industry average, which is even more telling, I think, when you consider that the ads that we were putting out were kind of risky for the viewer if the person was in fact a victim of labor trafficking or youth trafficking or agricultural trafficking. So all of those things combined were just a huge success from the engagement standpoint. And if you see, youth overall was the highest. And so when we get into recommendations at the end, that'll be something that, if there are dollars available in the future and you're having to decide what tactics to use and you can't use all of them anymore, what would make the most sense for each tactic, this would be an example of a really strong one to use for the youth trafficking based on the results. Oh, and then let me explain what some of this means. So CTR is click-through rate, and that's just determined by the clicks divided by the total number of impressions. So that's where this number comes from. So in addition to the audience network, we had some Facebook advertising going on. The campaigns we included here were for our labor, illicit massage, and agriculture. And we, again, looking at kind of baseline metrics, the average Facebook click-through rate across all industries is 0.90. They have a bunch of industry-specific breakouts, but unfortunately none that neatly fit what we were trying to do. So just for some context, the apparel industry is the highest and job training and employment is 0.47%. So while our total click-through rate is below all of this, I would, again, we felt pretty good about these numbers based on the cost for Facebook, plus the fact that we are, again, trying to reach out to people who may be experiencing or may be victims of trafficking in these 3 specific categories. We also tried some youth advertising, and our generic campaign was the only one that wasn't targeting victims. The generic was more of a PSA type of ad where we were trying to make the need known to the general public. And so across YouTube, here are just some of the high level baseline metrics. And so we look at the click-through rate, and this, of all the tactics, YouTube had the lowest click-through rate across the board. However, it doesn't necessarily mean it didn't work. And part of that is if it's a generic ad, there's not always necessarily going to be a strong call to action in the moment. If we're trying to inform people and they don't have an interest or a specific recollection of a potential abuse that they've seen to report, there may not need to be a call to action. But the most important fact is that we got it in front of 961,000 viewers. And so just for some baselines, the average click-through rate for YouTube is around 0.3 to 0.5%. And that's kind of like the high level information there. For TikTok, we were pretty pumped about this. This was one of the first and largest TikTok advertising campaigns that I've worked on, and so we were able to serve almost 3 million impressions here, to focusing on youth, which obviously was super important because the average user on TikTok it's something like 60 to 70% of their users are under 24, so it's the perfect age range for what we're going after, and 0.4% is pretty good engagement. Unfortunately, TikTok is still new enough; they don't have very strong baseline. So I looked everywhere I could to find a reliable source for baseline metrics for TikTok and couldn't find any. But I knew that when I saw that 0.4 was pretty excited just based on the length of TikTok videos and the nature in which people are watching them, the 0.4 seems strong. Geofencing. This one was interesting. So this was where we were targeting specific massage parlors that were provided to us and serving ads to the devices that entered those locations. And again, it's basically about industry average for display advertising. But again, when you think about these ads were all in Mandarin, so they were in foreign language, and the majority of people coming in and out of these massage parlors aren't going to be potential victims. They're more likely going to be potential perpetrators. And if they saw the ad in Mandarin, they probably would have no idea what it meant. So for it to basically perform at industry average, given that information, felt pretty good. And then we sent another document that Christine can share with you that has a breakout per location. So it'll show you the locations that we targeted that had the highest rates of engagement and served the most impressions, and the ones that had the lowest rates of engagement, which could just be interesting for you guys to use in the future, or even to let law enforcement know about locations that have a higher rate of people who had expressed interest in these ads that, again, were in Mandarin. So in order to have been drawn to it, you would have to know the language. And we'll get to website data later, but the data shows that these weren't accidental clicks of people just accidentally clicking on them, because the average time on site suggests that they were there and spending a little bit of time there once they got there. So Octane OTT, this is similar to TV advertising, but it's basically TV ads that are occurring on things like Roku, or just OTT stands for over the top. So it's just TV that's being served not through cable, but through Wi-Fi. And so there's no click data here, because this would just be like someone watching TV, but this was what we served for the generic and youth campaigns, because we had specific video ads created for these. And we get here, and this is to Liz's point earlier, all of the data and metrics are really cool, but they don't mean anything if we're not seeing results. We were encouraged to see those September numbers of the significant increase in the human trafficking hotline calls. And same goes to here. We had a ton of clicks, but we were looking and seeing that people were spending an average of 8 seconds on the site. That wouldn't have been an encouraging story. But what we saw was that from September 1 to October 13th, we had over 30,000 page views to this site. About 97% of that traffic came directly from one of our campaigns, and then the rest of the traffic came from the site directly. So they were typing in speakupnc.org into their browser, or they were finding it through an organic search.
Which, to note, the OTT ads that didn't have a link, that could have been, so the people who were finding Speak Up NC just organically, that could have been people seeing the ad through their television and then typing it into their browser.
Right. Because we weren't, because the website wasn't being advertised any other way for someone to know what the URL was to type in. And then this was just a note, we did have foreign language versions of the labor trafficking, the agricultural trafficking, and the illicit massage trafficking pages. And those pages, for whatever reason, did not get very much action. So as you see, fewer than 100 total page views there. But in all of the other pages that were in English, we see some pretty good, time on site. The youth page had over 4 minutes average time on the page once people got there, and all of them have respectable numbers that are indicating that people weren't coming to the site bouncing immediately, or feeling like it wasn't relevant information, or it possibly being an accidental click. So overall, those are the numbers. And if you guys have questions, I'd love to talk about them now.
Seth, Mark Nichols. So when you look at these numbers, and you're the expert in this field, what you're looking at, what grabs your attention and says, "Oh wow, I need to look at this," from your point of view?
I would say this information here. There have been campaigns that we've run before that have had high click-through rates, and click-through rates are important to note. But if people are making it to the page and they're not spending time on the website, that's not really encouraging, because that means they're not taking in the information that's on the website, and they're not engaging with the content that the ads were supposed to drive people to.
And just for context, Mark, 4 minutes is a long time. Like, you think about how much time you typically spend on a website, it's probably not a lot. Like, Seth, what would you say average amount of time on site is for, like,
I don't know off the top of my head. I know I can find it, and I know it is pretty low. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's like less than a minute of time that you are likely to spend per website on average.
Right.
Just for context, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that average time spent on site tells us that the people who are coming to the site are really interested in the content, and they stayed for a long time. So that's very bittersweet, you know.
Another thing I'd like to point out is that typically for these display kind of campaigns, we'd like to see them run for longer than 1 month, because if you are, and I've heard stories from our content experts and from Christine and Nancy directly, that somebody being exposed to an ad 1 or 2 times may not be enough for them to start, especially if they don't view themselves as a victim, or they don't know what labor trafficking is. They've never heard that concept before. Being able to have enough frequency over a period of time to maybe start wearing down on them, and kind of getting that thought into their mind, tends to result better. And usually what we would say is that 3 months is kind of our sweet spot for that. The benefit that we had here was that usually campaigns aren't spending what we were spending on this campaign in only a month's time. So we did have a fair amount of volume that I feel confident saying these ads led to solid engagement, because we're looking at over 30,000 page views that are giving us these average time on site numbers, rather than if we had a campaign that maybe only generated 800 page views over a month, and it seemed that they had high time spent on site, but 800 page views is a pretty low sample size to go off of.
Yeah, I think law enforcement, I can't remember who it was that said this, but I think it was like 5 touch points until someone agrees to get help, or it's like an average of 5 touch points for a victim. But this, to me, this is really encouraging. And I was really impressed by the TikTok numbers. TikTok is fairly new for us, and the click-through rate on TikTok was really high. So that was exciting for me to see.
I'm still trying to figure out what TikTok is.
Jennifer, you and me both.
But it's encouraging. You're right.
Yeah, well, to answer the question broadly, I mean, it's another social media platform that it's a young skewing social media platform. So we knew it was the perfect place to reach youth trafficking victims. And so I was just thrilled we were able to incorporate it into the plan.
Yeah, that totally makes sense from the youth perspective. And it also is just a reminder that I'm not young anymore.
Me neither.
So I guess I had a question for Seth. So Seth, can we have and maybe this is what you have here with your statistics and your matrix here on what you did. Is there any way to get a summary report that Caitlin and the commission can have, so we can use these statistics in a summary that that our legislators can look at and kind of read a one-pager or something that makes sense? We'll have to to bring it down a notch so they can just see without having to go and drill and ask 100 questions. This makes sense targeting these audiences, and these were the responses, and these are the reactions that we saw and that we feel like we're getting to people. Something that would make sense that we can take forward to hopefully get more funding, because this was very, very successful. When you look at the numbers that you have there, that was mind blowing to me.
Yes, you read my thoughts, Mark.
Yeah, I would say that if you could guide me in what would be most helpful, because that was the purpose of what this report was supposed to be. But really, I think that the two things that are the most valuable is this slide right here that has the total number of page views the campaign generated, and then the time on site, coupled with the bump in calls to the human trafficking hotline. And we could also see what October looks like as well, since this campaign did run into October.
No, hey Seth, it did not run into October. It was just September. But hey, I can help you come up with a one page for sure.
That would be great. And I think
Yeah.
as helpful as this is, and actually a long time ago, I was a journalism major in college, and it needs to be incredibly rudimentary so that somebody can pick it up and really understand it. It's, I love the analysis, but if we could pull some of that and make it even simpler to understand, I think that would be helpful. I also don't understand TikTok, but some folks we might be presenting this to might not even know general social media technology. So,
and that could be a footnote you could put on there about TikTok generation, whatever age group and what it does, because they're going to say, they'll probably ask their staffers, what the heck's TikTok?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure. No, we can put together a one page summary and just definitely put it more in, easy to understand terms, and here's the high level data points, and here's why this should continue, kind of thing.
That would be awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. And Liz, you read my mind earlier where you said basically what I was thinking. Human trafficking's utmost a grassroots campaign to get out there and make awareness and get in the doors and faces of people and let them know what's happening. Our law enforcement's doing that, and we're doing great outreach. But through media campaigns like this is tremendous, and this is the future. I mean, everybody's got a smart device. Everybody's looking. They're trying to get there, and if you don't know, you Google or you look. And with these geofences, we use them in other works that I do. They're very, very effective. I mean, we can pick up so much from individuals from intelligence. We can broadcast so much to individuals who need help. And just having those numbers there and the different language barriers that we have, that's fantastic that we're able to do them. So, Seth, these things are already in place now. So if the commission was to say, okay, we'd like to continue these efforts, if we have the funding, everything is already in place now to continue. Same, is that correct?
Yes.
And we can add to, as needed to different locations as we move forward, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We can basically, for the targeting that we use for most of these things, it's geography, demographics, some behavioral targeting that we include in there, and we can update any of that information as we go.
And Mark, I would also like them to get together just the basic information. Liz mentioned, just like minimal maintaining the website. So just like hosting fee, so minimal to what would the cost be to continue to, keep the campaign running. So we have it as a reference point if that was asked.
Absolutely. And Seth, the further what we're looking at, we were setting out that rest area the other day when we filmed all these scenarios. What a great place to set geofences up at a rest area, welcome centers where we've had known human trafficking cases where people could pull in. They would get messages from our travelers. I mean, there's all kind of things we can do. When I was sitting here thinking, and you kind of wowed me with your numbers. So absolutely, I agree with you, Caitlin. We can roll with this.
And yeah, Mark, I'm with you. Like, you have to meet people where they are, and you have to be where they are. You can't force them to come to you. And this is a way to do that.
Excellent.
Well, I don't want to cut the conversation off. I don't want to cut this short. This is a great discussion. We're running a little short on time, so just wanted to make sure no one had any kind of urgent, pressing questions before we let Liz and Seth go.
Thank you. All I got to say is thank you very much, and we're going to be rolling. Seth, I forgot to mention you earlier. You did a great job, and you look good driving my Denali out there too. So.
I was wondering whose car that
My
was.
debut as a traffic.
Seth did great.
You had the
Guys,
hurricane
thank you
plate
so
on the
much
front.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
About
Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys. That was great. Again, we are kind of running right up on time here. So, Christine, I'm going to turn it over to you to hit the highlights on staff report.
I can't hear if Christine's talking.
Yeah. Christine, you're muted.
I guess I cannot unmute when I'm sharing. Okay. I am just going to actually hit a highlight of a couple of things because I do think that we can move most to our next meeting. But I did have a couple of things to follow up on just with Seth and Liz. You know, Nancy and I really, this was a short time frame to do this whole campaign, including the radio that we did. And the content specialist it was really invaluable to us to have them, although it took a lot more time to have conversations and discussions and make decisions. But I did want to just point out that, you know, the 5 content specialists and others that we involved in helping create the messaging was a very diverse group of people. So lots of different lived experiences, lots of different experiences within the trafficking movement. And so that was extremely helpful for us in general to learn more moving forward. The only real analytics we have on our end, you know, with the National Human Trafficking Hotline, there is a tip line where people can call in tips to law enforcement, and we are able to see that data. And so I thought I'd show you on the screen that September was the highest month of tips this year so far, and that when you compare it to the previous 3 years, it's still double the tips in the month that we normally see. So we feel really good about that. We do have the other 2 videos that will also be becoming available. One is a general awareness that is commission focused with 7 of you that said yes to being interviewed during a pandemic on a very short time frame and notice. And then a general awareness video that's community focused. It does not have any interviews with the commission, but is kind of gives 3 different stories and case scenarios and can be used. So you'll be seeing those come out as well. You do have this PowerPoint to kind of read through some of the training and technical assistance items. Most of you saw the announcement that the resource directory Madeline has been working on is officially out and on the website. It will be a living document that needs constantly updated and changed. But it will be a great way for people across the state to learn what's happening in their area, who's doing what, where the gaps are. We plan on doing a lot more analysis of that guide coming up soon just to see. But you do see that there are 98 nonprofits listed in that guide. Only about 1/3 of them are specific to human trafficking, but it is full of nonprofits that are involved in the movement. So Nancy at our next meeting will also be sharing about the survey that came out and those results of what's needed for training and technical assistance. Our next meeting will talk some about a toolkit that NCCAT helped us update a draft for that we hope to be able to finish with them in the next few months. And then we have also been able to finalize some material. That's what I wanted to hit on before we ended today. We were able to develop about 9 different items that can be used by commissioners, by the public. We plan to print stock of these to have on hand and have the printable versions online in a resource library that's being created. So let's see, I want to share one of those with you to give you an idea about what one of those, for example, is a tray liner for like a restaurant that has trays that, you know, like K&W or a buffet that you would go through and has a tray with a tray liner. So this is one that's ready that, well, this is actually not the tray liner. The tray liner shows you some myths about human trafficking, what the definition is, some signs, and then tells about the commission and how to get involved in the back. There are fact sheets on human trafficking that have the definition but are a little more specific to North Carolina or can be used. So as we're coming up to Human Trafficking Awareness Month in January, you'll be hearing more about that soon as well. But as we're coming up to that month, that material will be on the website and the resource library to be used across the state by anybody who needs them to help raise awareness in January and going forward. So, okay, that is where I'll stop and turn it back to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. And I'm glad that you finally explained what a tray liner is, because I have been wondering that for weeks. I should have just asked. Anyone have any questions for Christine? Okay, thanks, Christine, for really hitting the high points there. The last thing on the agenda is just my chair remarks. I didn't really have anything all that significant. I am very excited about all the work that the commission is doing. There are a lot of people working really hard on different projects. I am really encouraged by that. And really just a big thanks to all of you all for all of your participation. Thank you for your time today. Does anyone have any other business before the commission? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Everybody's muted. Okay, thanks, Caitlin. Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. You all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer, I'm sorry. I missed that last little thing which you said I had to get up and take care of something. We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
We are. I just thought too. I thought I'm going to stay on in case y'all